In a world ruled by power and greed, one man changed everything. Umar bin Abdul Aziz, the caliph who lived simply, ruled justly, and left behind a legacy of fairness that echoes through the ages. How did he eradicate poverty in just 30 months? Watch now and discover the untold story of Islam's most just ruler. Have you ever heard of a ruler so just, so upright, so devoted to the welfare of his people, that by the time he finished his reign there wasn't a single poor person left who needed charity? A man so fair that even non-Muslims under his rule praised his honesty. A man who could have lived in palaces and bathed in gold, but chose instead a simple life, fearing the accountability of the hereafter. In a time of kings who ruled through fear and greed, one caliph stood out: Umar bin Abdul Aziz. His short reign became one of the most glorious chapters in Islamic history. How did he do it? And why is he still remembered today? Stay with us as we uncover the extraordinary legacy of Umar bin Abdul Aziz, the just ruler of Islam. Umar bin Abdul Aziz was born in the city of Medina in the year 682 CE, around 63 years after the passing of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He was born into the Umayyad family, the ruling dynasty of the Muslim world at that time, but his lineage also connected him to the family of Umar ibn al-Khattab, or R.A., the second rightly guided caliph of Islam. His mother was the granddaughter of Umar ibn al-Khattab, a fact that would later play a deep role in shaping his character. Young Umar grew up between two worlds: the luxury of the Umayyad court and the deep spirituality and knowledge of Medina's scholars. Though his father was a powerful governor in Egypt, Umar spent his early years in Medina surrounded by some of the greatest scholars and companions of the companions, the Tabi'un. He would sit for hours with figures like Imam Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, learning the Quran, Hadith, and the principles of justice and governance rooted in Islam. Unlike many young princes, Umar was not impressed by material wealth. Even as a youth, he displayed remarkable intelligence, humility, and a thirst for justice. He understood the heavy responsibility that came with leadership. From early on, he would say, "The caliphate is not about wearing fine garments or ruling over people. It is about standing before Allah with an account for every action taken." When Umar reached maturity, his natural talents were recognized, and he was appointed governor of Medina during the caliphate of al-Walid ibn Abdul Malik. In Medina, he proved himself as a fair, just, and wise administrator. He repaired relations between citizens and the government, ensured public funds were used properly, and established strong systems for dealing with complaints. He also maintained peace and respect between different religious communities. Word of his good governance soon spread throughout the empire. It was during these years that Umar's character matured even further. He became known for his humility, simple lifestyle, and concern for the poor. He refused unnecessary luxuries and led by example. Even non-Muslims admired his fairness. He would often walk among the people, speaking with the merchants, the travelers, the farmers, the widows, and the orphans, learning firsthand their needs and struggles. But the defining moment of his life came in 717 CE, when Caliph Sulaiman bin Abdul Malik died. On his deathbed, Sulaiman, seeing Umar's honesty, secretly appointed him as his successor, hoping he would restore integrity to the caliphate. When Umar learned he had been chosen as caliph, he was deeply troubled. He had not sought this position. In fact, he feared it. On the day of his inauguration, Umar stood before the people and declared, "O people, this burden has been placed upon me without my asking. I release you from your pledge. Choose for yourselves whom you wish to lead you." But the people insisted, for they knew no one more worthy. Thus began one of the most remarkable reigns in Islamic history. From his very first day as caliph, Umar bin Abdul Aziz made it clear things were going to change. He sent letters to all governors and administrators announcing sweeping reforms. He dismissed corrupt officials and replaced them with righteous ones. He banned oppressive taxation and returned confiscated lands to their rightful owners. He abolished luxurious royal traditions. The royal palace, known for its pomp, was closed to unnecessary gatherings. He ordered that public money be used strictly for public benefit, not for personal indulgence. Even his own family was not spared. He instructed that wealth taken unjustly by the Umayyads be returned to the public treasury. His personal life mirrored this commitment to justice. Umar refused any salary beyond basic needs. He wore simple clothes. His wife, Fatima bint Abdul Malik, herself a princess, sold her jewelry and gave up luxury willingly. Together they lived humbly, dedicated to Allah and the welfare of the Ummah. Umar's greatest concern was to restore the spirit of the Prophet's message. He saw the caliphate not as a throne, but as a trust from Allah. He often wept at night, praying that he would not fail his duty. His motto was, "The night belongs to Allah, the day belongs to my people." Under his leadership, welfare programs flourished. The distribution of zakat, charity, became so efficient that in some provinces, notably in North Africa, tax collectors reported that they could find no poor people to accept zakat. Poverty had virtually vanished. Education was another key focus. He supported the building of schools and ensured that Islamic knowledge was spread fairly. Teachers were paid from the state treasury so that education was free and accessible to all. Umar also ensured fair treatment of non-Muslims. He reminded his officials, "They are under our protection. They must be treated with fairness, and their rights must be safeguarded." He stopped forced conversions and ordered that no church or synagogue be destroyed unjustly. Though his reign was marked by peace, not all supported his reforms. Many in the Umayyad family who had grown rich from the old ways saw him as a threat. Some resisted openly, others plotted in secret. Yet Umar remained firm, always mindful of his accountability before Allah. One famous story tells of a messenger who found Umar mending his own shoes by candlelight. When asked why the ruler of the Muslim world was doing such a small task himself, Umar replied, "This is from my own money. When I use the public candle, it is only for public affairs. This shoe is for my personal use, and so I will mend it by my own light." Such was his honesty. Despite facing opposition and threats, Umar continued his mission. For 2.5 years, his caliphate brought about an era of fairness, compassion, and prosperity. But such justice did not sit well with those addicted to power and luxury. It is widely believed that Umar was poisoned by those within the Umayyad elite who feared losing their wealth. On his deathbed, Umar remained calm. He recited verses from the Quran and whispered words of forgiveness. His last prayer was that Allah accept his efforts and pardon his shortcomings. At just 39 years old, Umar bin Abdul Aziz passed away, leaving behind a legacy that would be remembered for generations. Historians, both Muslim and non-Muslim, have praised him endlessly. Ibn Kathir wrote that Umar deserved to be called the 5th rightly guided caliph. So closely did he follow the example of Abu Bakr, Umar ibn al-Khattab, Uthman and Ali. May Allah be pleased with them all. Even today, over 1,300 years later, leaders look to his example. His life proves that true leadership is about service, not domination, about fairness, not favoritism, about humility, not arrogance. After Umar bin Abdul Aziz's passing, the Muslim world mourned. Across the empire, from Spain in the west to the Indus Valley in the east, people grieved the loss of this righteous ruler. He had only ruled for about 30 months, but in that short time, he had left an impact deeper than many rulers who reigned for decades. There are many recorded sayings from those who lived under his caliphate. A famous scholar, Imam al-Zuhri, who had known many caliphs, once said, "I have never seen anyone more pious, more just, or more humble in leadership than Umar bin Abdul Aziz." One of his close aides, Raja ibn Haywa, described him with these words, "I have never seen a man so afraid of displeasing Allah as Umar bin Abdul Aziz. He would tremble when thinking of the day of judgment." Another great scholar, Imam Malik ibn Anas, founder of the Maliki school of thought, held immense respect for Umar II. He said, "His era brought back justice and mercy to the Ummah. He ruled like one of the rightly guided caliphs. Ordinary people too remembered him with deep love." In many regions of the empire, during Friday prayers, the imams would openly make dua for him. Even years after his death, one simple but moving story comes from a shepherd in the Syrian countryside. A traveler once asked him, "Why are your flocks so fat and your lands so peaceful?" The shepherd replied, "Since Umar bin Abdul Aziz became caliph, wolves and sheep graze side by side. The wolves no longer steal and the officials no longer oppress us." Let us now explore a few more famous examples from his life that demonstrate the depth of his character. One day, a delegation from Iraq came to visit him. Among them was a young boy who boldly spoke first. Umar asked one, "Why have you spoken ahead of your elders?" The boy replied, "O Commander of the Faithful, if the matter depends on age, then there are others older than you who should rule. But if it depends on wisdom, then a man should speak if he has something good to say." Umar smiled and praised the boy's wisdom, reminding his court that justice should be based on truth, not on status. Another famous incident involved his own son, Abdul Malik. The son once asked his father, "O my father, you have spread justice in the land, Udamuru, but when will you also increase our own share from the treasury?" Umar replied, "My son, the wealth of the Ummah is a trust. I will be accountable before Allah for every dinar spent. Would you like me to be punished on the day of judgment for giving you what is not yours?" The son, full of understanding, wept and never asked again. Even non-Muslims were treated fairly under Umar's reign. The bishop of a Christian community once wrote to him saying, "O Commander of the Faithful, under your rule we feel safer and better treated than under the rule of our own kings." Umar wrote back, "Your lives, your property, and your dignity are under our protection as long as you live with us in peace." There are also famous records of how Umar bin Abdul Aziz would personally check on the poor at night. He would often disguise himself and walk through the streets, ensuring that people were safe, that food was available, and that no one was oppressed. When his advisors asked why he did this himself, he replied, "How else will I know the truth of my people's lives unless I see it with my own eyes?" Beyond his personal humility, Umar bin Abdul Aziz also had a grand vision for the Ummah. He wrote many letters to the governors and scholars of his empire, encouraging them to return to the simple teachings of the Prophet and to ensure that justice was upheld over personal interests. One of his most famous letters stated, "Beware of injustice, for there is no veil between the cry of the oppressed and Allah." And so, through reforms of taxation, the public treasury, governance, education, and personal conduct, Umar bin Abdul Aziz showed what it meant to rule with sincerity. His death was mourned even in distant lands, even in non-Muslim courts. In Constantinople, for example, it is reported that his reputation as a fair and just ruler had reached the ears of the Byzantine emperor. Centuries later, Muslim historians such as Ibn Kathir, al-Dahabi, and Ibn al-Jawzi all wrote glowing biographies of Umar II, describing him as a reviver of justice and a model for Muslim rulers. The famous Andalusian scholar Ibn Hazm wrote, "If only all rulers were like Umar bin Abdul Aziz, there would be no injustice in the world." Even modern secular historians have written admiringly about him. The British historian H.G. Wells described him as the most remarkable ruler of early Islam. Another Western scholar, Dozy, called him the best of the Umayyads, a caliph who deserved to rule an ideal society. And yet what made Umar bin Abdul Aziz so special was not just his policies, but his deep inner sincerity. He truly feared Allah and lived every moment aware that leadership was a trust, not a privilege. In a time when many rulers across the world used power for personal gain, Umar bin Abdul Aziz stood as a shining exception, reminding us all that leadership is an act of service. So today, more than 1,300 years after his death, what lessons can we take from the life of Umar bin Abdul Aziz? First, that personal piety matters. He began his reign by reforming himself, giving up luxury and focusing on humility. Second, that justice is for all. Under his rule, Muslims and non-Muslims alike felt protected. Third, that public service is a trust, not a throne to be abused. And finally, that even a short life can leave a great legacy. Umar ruled for just 30 months, yet his name is remembered across centuries. In a world today where corruption and injustice still exist, the example of Umar bin Abdul Aziz remains a guiding light. He showed us that true power comes from humility, sincerity, and serving the people for the sake of Allah, not for ego or fame. So the next time you hear of Umar bin Abdul Aziz, remember not just the man, but the message, that justice, honesty, and piety can change the world. And perhaps in our own lives, we too can follow his example, in our families, in our communities, and in whatever small positions of responsibility we hold. This is the lasting legacy of Umar bin Abdul Aziz, the just ruler of Islam.